If your review necessitates early access, I don't think you're doing a review. I think you're doing PR.
This is just like Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift getting married.
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
They finally announced that Hollow Knight Silksong is a real video game and not a mass hallucination. And that is coming out on September 4th. A week from when this episode goes live, which is exciting. I, for one, am excited for the game.
Yeah.
I know you have expressed mild interest, at the very least, in the game. But sort of the interesting story, there were many stories sort of surrounding it. But one of the things that sort of came out when they announced, hey, it has a release date. When they announced it was like 2 weeks from when they announced. But one of the big stories about it was that Team Cherry said, we are not going to be providing any review copies to outlets for review for this game because we don't think that would be fair to our Kickstarter backers and all that. We want them to be able to play the game first because they are the people who we have sort of promised this to, and also sort of made them wait sort of the longest with all of this. So I'm curious, Jake, there was a response to this sentiment that Team Cherry is not giving out review copies from a lot of game reviewers and then from a lot of the sort of like gaming public, let's say. There were a lot of different responses, and I think they're all kind of like multifaceted and sort of interesting and compelling and confounding in their own ways. And I kind of want to talk about that with you, but I'm just curious, right off the bat, what is your reaction to the idea that Team Cherry is not providing review copies?
I have no strong feelings for or against. As somebody that I consider myself a critic, I consider myself somebody who applies a critical lens to video games. I don't feel that this benefits or hurts me, nor do I feel that it benefits or hurts games criticism as a concept.
Yeah. I agree, because I think I am not bothered by this. I hear this, and I hear a studio of, I think it's 3 people, maybe it's 4. But I hear a studio of a handful of people saying, we want to do right by the people who've supported us. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that is, I actually find that to be kind of admirable. In a industry that is so driven by profit and by these things. Because I think that if Team Cherry did give out review copies, again, the game isn't out, so I can't speak to its quality, but I would have to imagine that this game is going to score well if they did review copies for it.
So I actually think I want to bring something up here right off the bat, because I think you are accepting of kind of this reported explanation. This we are not giving out review copies because we want to go to the Kickstarter backers first, as if they couldn't go to the Kickstarter backers and the reviewers at the same time.
I think they could do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and so I think something that I want to kind of point out about this is, because I think what we're doing today is that we're kind of going to perform this exegesis of the Hollow Knight Silksong launch plan and kind of all of the different responses to it.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I kind of want to make clear is I think we need to identify, not for the reviewers' side, but for the people launching a video game, what is the purpose and value of a review, and how does that help or assist, or how does that work alongside the goals of the video game makers? And I think with something like Hollow Knight Silksong, from a business point of view, brass tacks, I have a hard time really justifying the need or purpose of reviews for them. Just putting aside the critical, the artistic value, all that other stuff that we will get to eventually. I think especially for indie games, reviews can be a good way of getting in front of people that otherwise maybe didn't know about the game.
Yes, 100%.
Reviews can be a good way of saying hey, this is a really good game. This is an 8, this is a 9, this is a 10. Maybe you want to pay attention to this. But I think, as you and I are aware, and as I think every single person watching this podcast is aware, the last thing that Hollow Knight Silksong needs is PR, is awareness.
It's the most this game has become kind of a meme with like, you know, anytime a showcase happens, no matter what it is, even if it is likely that it's not going to be there, even at the Pokemon Presents, even at the, you know, Kirby Air Raiders Direct, everyone's like no Silksong, which I think is funny, right? I think it's funny, but also it's just become this like permanent internet thing of like, people are talking about this. Anytime people are discussing video games, pretty much, it feels like people are talking about Hollow Knight Silksong.
Point. And I do think that like when you talk about the awareness of Silksong, it is in the same breath as like GTA 6. Like that's what we're talking about.
I agree.
And, yeah. So if in theory, just if the viewer can follow me on this train of thought, still it's like, well, why not? There's awareness. Why not more? Why not do reviews anyway? And I do think that there is a degree to which reviews can only hurt the conversation surrounding the game on launch, because they're already at a 100 out of 10. Why would you give out reviews so that 1, 2, 3 outlets can give the game maybe middling scores for the sake of, because that's going to disrupt the kind of energy going into the launch right now. So like from, again, just removing myself from the artistic enterprise, like from their point of view, selling this game, I don't think you could ask for a better re-release temperature in the room than what they have right now.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's a game that like people are just going bananas for. People are just so excited for this thing. So to exactly your point, it's like, why? So like, okay, let's say Hollow Knight Silksong comes out and it's like everyone agrees across the board, this is an 8 out of 10. On the reviewer side. That, in my opinion, is still, hey, this is a pretty good game, right? But it's not the unfounded levels of like, this is going to be the second coming of Christ as a video game package that people are sort of expecting it to be. So why, if you're Team Cherry, let that be the conversation when you could just be like, we are the second coming of Christ in the package of a video game?
Of course, because the hype for this game has gotten so, I think, admittedly out of control that there is a catharsis that the game demands at this point that for a lot of fans, and I don't think that catharsis is best served by a review. I think for them, the catharsis is best served by buying and playing, turning the game on. I think that's going to, I think that there's like a mismatch with how hyped this game is, that even if reviews did come out, there would just be this unnecessary friction now between the critical perspective and the overwhelmingly hyped fan. And I just don't, for their point of view, I don't know how that would be a benefit to them whatsoever.
I completely agree. So I don't know if there's much like, is there discourse surrounding that? Like in terms of like, are people like disagreeing about that? About, again, just not the artistic idea of like having reviews or whatever, but the actual just like, it makes sense that Team Cherry would not want this. I haven't really seen much of people sort of arguing about that.
Yeah, I don't think directly. I think I would hope at least that when opposed with this hypothetical, this whatever we just spent the last 6 minutes describing, I don't think anybody's going to hear that and disagree with anything that we just laid out. Yeah,
because
I would hope not.
I would hope not either, because I think that is a good place to then start this conversation about like, okay, we can all agree that we understand why the studio would not do this,
right?
Based on the facts about like the surrounding this game's release. So then where do you think we should then go? Because there's now this idea of like, some people are saying now too, like, well, it doesn't need reviews because it's going to be perfect, which I think is a silly thing to say. But then there's also this more specific perspective from actual game critics that are distressed about not having the ability to have reviews early for this game because of a handful of different reasons.
Definitely.
And, where do you see us going with this first?
I think that there is this perspective that I have seen online that I think a lot of people watching will understand, of the review as a warning, the review as a piece that can tell you, so like what we're saying about Hollow Knight right now, I think this idea of it is so hyped, people are so confident in it, whatever, but like maybe that's how a lot of people, and the awareness of it, maybe that's how a lot of people feel about like a Call of Duty game, and yet we still get a Call of Duty game early review. And there is this sense of safety there because maybe the review can come out and say, hey, everybody, this game is actually quite bad. Don't buy it. And should the consumer be concerned that the video game makers are not providing early reviews and thus fighting against the ability for this artifice to give us a warning in case the game is not worth our hard-earned dollar bills?
I think it's a kind of, for me, it's like a case by case basis.
Okay.
Because something like, did Redfall do reviews?
Redfall.
It did.
So,
I'm trying to think about like recent, like kind of like bombs. You know what I mean? Like games that just like didn't perform particularly well.
I think I remember the Avengers game that I like quite a bit. I think that game did not do reviews, and then I think you can kind of see like how it maybe was there. Ubisoft games, stuff like this. People have this claim that like, oh, they're hiding something.
Yes, that's the thing is a lot of the times when like a studio is like, we're not doing reviews. I think the gaming public is like, that's a bad sign because it means that they're trying to like kind of pull one over on you. Right. To be like, well, review, or if like sometimes it'll be like, well, the review embargo is when the game comes out.
Right.
So it's kind of like Cyberpunk, I believe, did this where
the
review embargo lifted the day the game came out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like you couldn't hear like, hey, this game actually does have some pretty major flaws until you had probably already pre-ordered or bought it.
So do you think then I like to think about journalism, kind of like the practice of journalism is a counterbalance to corporate greed and corporate goals.
Agreed.
So do we think that it is viable to claim that early reviews are kind of like a pressure that we should apply to all corporations across the board because they can act as this counterbalance to corporate greed? They can act as kind of like the you can't hide that you are selling people a bad product because we are kind of enforcing this early review thing. And by Team Cherry or whoever's in charge of this, by the Hollow Knight Silksong people, by them kind of defying the early review, they are weakening this structure that we have to protect the consumer. I don't really feel this way, but I'm kind of taking on this. I'm taking on this side because I think it's almost, there's an interesting question here, right?
Yeah, it's complicated is the answer, because someone who's been on the journalist side of things,
of course,
the reason why you want to have a review go up at embargo is because that is the time when, and if you are listening and you're not familiar with what that means, basically a studio will give you an early copy of the game, but they will say, we will give you this under the agreement that you will not discuss anything about this game before this set date and time.
Right.
And then, so that's why all reviews go up at the exact same time, because it'll be like 11 a.m. Eastern time on like a Tuesday before the game comes out on a Thursday. And then that's why they all go up at the same time. So that's what an embargo is. And embargoes, how it feels oftentimes is if a game is really confident about itself, the embargo will be like farther in advance so that the hype, quote unquote, will build for the game's release. Whereas, and it's not always like this, but yeah.
I would also say that that embargoes that feel confident, they also give you more time to play the game.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And where's I going with this? But okay, so like, you want your review to go up at embargo because that is the time when it is guaranteed to get the most eyes on it.
Right.
Because that is when people are specifically looking for reviews because no one has access to the game yet. So it's like, okay, we want to read about the quality of Hollow Knight Silksong from people who've ostensibly played it and played a lot of it, hopefully.
They have witnessed and reported back.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if you miss embargo, it's a really big deal because you are cutting down the viewership that this article is going to get.
Right.
And so there's this sort of push and pull, right? Of like a lot of games are probably best consumed in a longer period of time than the pre-release window allows. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes reviews have to be rushed, or like people have to like rush through a game or maybe not play it in a way that is like actually how a game is meant to be sort of experienced because they have to get this review up. And so like the idea of, is journalism like going against this idea of like corporate interest? I would say yes, but it's difficult
it because now it's serving the corporate interests of
the company
you work for.
Correct.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
And then also, if you exist to challenge corporate interests from a game company, they will say, haha, cool, you are not getting our video game early.
That's true.
And then so now you have ostensibly cut off a major revenue stream for yourself by having these reviews go up in embargo. I know like websites like Kotaku specifically, I know they have been blacklisted by a lot of sites or publishers and whatever. And that's like well documented and whatever, because that site tends to be more critical of those companies. But then that means that like the company's like, okay, then we are going to hurt your corporate interests as well. So so the answer to your question is, Jake, it's complicated. It's really complicated.
And I think something that you're illustrating there that I want to make clear to the listener too, is that by virtue of participating in an early review with a review embargo, you kind of are aligning yourself with the corporate interests of the game. Like you are.
By agreeing to outside organization's sort of demands about how you discuss a game, because then also like a lot of times the company will say, please do not discuss any events after this point. So for example, a very famous example of this is The Last of Us Part 2, which obviously has that big twist of like half of it's Ellie, half of it's Abby. You were not allowed to discuss anything about Abby's side of it, which then begs this very interesting question about like, well, then how do you discuss this game that is at its core about this one thing if Sony itself is saying you're not allowed to talk about this? And then so if you want the review to go up, you have to abide by that. But you know what I'm saying? It's kind of a slippery slope that's very challenging.
Yeah, of course. And I think immediately here, kind of a natural conclusion that I wouldn't say anything against if people came to was, is there a degree to which kind of the platonic ideal of the video game review is something that inherently happens after the game is out, completely unaligned with publisher goals?
So this is the root of a lot of the conversation surrounding the Silksong thing.
Yeah,
because there were a handful of people who were posting online. Some of these were in like the quote tweets for when this information came out. It came out because Jason Schreier had an interview with Team Cherry. So this was happening in like the replies and the quote tweets to that, or quote posts. I don't know how they say it on like Blue Sky. And then also like people are just like individually posting about this idea of people being upset that like, okay, like critics aren't allowed to have this early, and so that is bad, because we are not getting critic reviews when this game comes out. And I think the pushback to that from my perspective is, and this is from a limited perspective because I think it's not taking in the entire context of what that person is saying, but like I would say, I do not think that a video game review or review of anything, but a video game review needs to come out at embargo to be a good review that discusses this game.
Yeah, something I saw kind of fronted a lot online was this idea that by not giving way to early reviews, there's a degree to which Team Sherry is eschewing the critical importance of video game reviews as a concept. And I think where that comes from is this logic of, if you don't give us early review codes, it puts the reviewers in a situation where they want their reviews to come out as soon as possible to maximize the views and kind of like money that they can make off of their reviews, which in turn will make the critical work worse. And by putting the reviewer in this position, Team Cherry is aiding a worse critical landscape for reviews. I think that's what that logic is.
Which I understand, because to me, the frustration about this situation is actually, in my opinion, not it's being attributed to Team Cherry.
Yeah, of course.
Because the frustration is, well, it sucks that I have to have a review at embargo.
Yes.
Because that is absolutely necessary for my review to be seen as a success for my company. That's what the frustration is. And I completely understand that. But I struggle to point that at Team Cherry when like this is just like the reality of the industry on the journalist end of it versus like, as we've discussed, that I think, again, I would be hard pressed to find anyone who disagrees that it would not behoove Team Cherry to not do this.
Help me out with something.
I'll help you out with anything.
Help me out with something.
Anything.
If a video game reviewing outlet, a website, whatever, says that because we're not getting early codes and we can't ensure that this review is going to come out in a timely fashion,
yeah,
it is no longer worth it for us to review Hollow Knight Silksong. That to me is a situation that's not going to happen, right?
I think it depends on the outlet.
Okay.
In my opinion, no way that a website like IGN would miss a Hollow Knight Silksong review.
I would even question
go ahead.
If IGN had I'm sure IGN's review for Hollow Knight came out after Hollow Knight came out.
Because that just shadow dropped. That was like dropped.
I feel like it was on PC, and it was kind of like people kind of talked about it for like a year, and then it launched on Switch like a year later.
Oh, that's what it was.
And, and everybody was like, "Oh, time to get on top of this."
So I'll say this: I think you are going to get a lot of articles that go up called Hollow Knight Silksong Review.
Oh no!
This is how you get around this as the company. I'm sure there are a lot of conversations happening right now between editorial boards about how to handle this situation.
Right.
That the day Hollow Knight Silksong comes out, there's going to be articles titled Hollow Knight Silksong Review, and they will be reviews in progress that are like, we woke up early or whatever, like stayed up to actually play this game for 2 hours. I'm going to start to write a review. So there's something for someone to click on as soon as this game comes out, and it's going to be updated as it goes from a website like IGN or GameSpot or Game Informer or whatever. I think that if you are a smaller site, I would think that maybe a lot of them forego reviews so that they can focus on other coverage like guides or like patch notes, updates, any sort of like news for Hollow Knight, features, whatever, to try and say like, we're not going to beat IGN for this. And we just don't have the resources to say that like, don't do any other work specifically on this review. You know what I mean? When that might be the thing that is going to be the least relevant to people who are clicking.
Now, is it some great loss on the part of the video game outlet employee if their boss says, okay, we're just not going to review this game?
So let me answer your question with a question.
I'm kind of just like going through all the different permutations of this because I think like something that is interesting to me is this, like, now I, the reviewer, am put in a position where I have to crunch to produce my review. There is a degree to which I push back on this a little bit because why is the employee, the worker, the writer, the journalist, the critic, why are they so concerned about the monetary gain of this review? Why?
So I guess, Mike, are you asking like,
if I work for a video game coverage website,
criticalerror.com.
Criticalerror.com.
I'm the boss. I'm saying, Jake,
you're the boss.
We are not doing a Hollow Knight review.
Right. Well, and okay, so here's kind of the situation I'm imagining.
Yeah.
I get a salary every 2 weeks. You pay me. You write me.
I'm paying you $7 million.
$7 million every 2
weeks.
weeks.
We make from Patreon.
That's right.
Patreon.com/criticalerror. Join the Critical Error Nation. We would love to have you.
It kind of sounds like we don't need you, but
excuse me. I love it. It's not. We're not in it for the money.
Okay,
I'm in it for the love of discussing video games and the love of our nation.
Of course.
Yes. So continue.
So every 2 weeks, you give me a check, and that check is the same, no matter how well my pieces perform.
Correct. This is, by the way, the ideal version of how it works in the games industry. It is very much not like this, but oftentimes. Go on.
Wait, it's not?
Well, first of all, you're a salaried employee.
Okay, well, putting that aside.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay,
but like,
continue.
even if I'm a freelancer, I think I get paid for the amount of words I do or whatever, and
sometimes.
It has not really.
So there, yeah. So it's peel back the curtain on the games industry a little bit. A good website that you want to work for says, no matter what you do, you write a news post, you're getting $35 or whatever.
That's
right?
how it's only ever been pitched to me.
That is a good website.
Okay.
A bad website.
Yeah.
There are two kinds.
Oh,
there's
wait, are you
there's
talking
a bad
about
and there's a worse.
Okay, no, okay, I do know
There
about
are some that are like you work for free and you exclusively make based on views.
Yes.
That's the worst version. There are some that are like, we'll pay you $10 for this news piece, but every 1,000 views you get like 25 cents.
Once it clears
that
a threshold, you start to make
correct.
Okay,
and by the way, in either of those situations, you are being taken advantage of. Go on.
Right, and I think that I'm not really speaking to that experience.
No, of course not. Of course not. This is a much more complicated issue. We are boiling this down into, Jake, you are a salaried employee for criticalerror.com. You get paid every 2 weeks, every single time, and there's never any issues with that. Again, kind of rarity in video games industry. We have to like direct this in a single direction. We cannot take all variables into account for this discussion because it's just too much. So continue with your hypothetical here. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No. This is lovely. I think that there's some confusion to me about like, I am getting paid for this many hours and I'm doing this specific job. And I guess if I'm not working on my Hollow Knight Silksong review, I'm working the same amount, getting paid the same amount.
Yep.
I guess I'm confused about why it's like, because I'm not getting a review code, this makes my job harder. And I think there's like this line of logic that I've seen online, because our review does not have the guarantee to be as successful online as it could be. And I guess my overall question is, why is the video games media person so concerned with how much money their parent company is going to make off of that review?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. First of all, I would say, like, Jake, do you not believe in wanting glory?
Is that what it is? Or is it I feel like part of it is essentially positioned in this almost existential way of like, well, I want games media I want to keep my job, but I don't think that that's really supposed to be.
I think there is a heightened level of anxiety right now surrounding job security in games media. As someone who's laid off from games media, right? Yeah. Like when big things come to shake up the industry, you don't want that. Because so let's say, okay, Hollow Knight Silksong is one game. It's one big game, but one game that says we're not doing review copies.
Yeah.
And now, and also like Nintendo did not do this, right? With the Switch 2. Kind of. They did, but it wasn't like this big, long window, whatever.
Right. They didn't with Mario Kart. They did with Donkey Kong.
Correct. Yes. But then like Ubisoft sees this and says, actually, you know what? We're not doing review copies either. Hollow Knight doesn't have to do it. We're not doing it. And then, EA says the same thing. And then it's all domino effect. And then now review copies just don't happen anymore to journalists or whatever. They're happening for influencers because it's a different job. It's a different pool of whatever.
And this weakens a tent pole of the business.
And now, again, everyone has heightened anxiety about their job security because there is no job security in the games industry at all. Now it's like, well, fuck. A portion of our revenue is gone. And with revenue down, whatever is going on at these websites, it's like, okay, cool. We are going to be losing some people.
So is this a canary in the coal mine?
I think this is people are upset about this in regards to it being Hollow Knight, but I think largely this is a bigger issue that is emblematic of sort of what's going on here. Does that kind of make sense? And it's an anxiety about it. And so like, I understand that there is sort of a level of like, I disagree with this idea of like, well, if I don't get my review up at embargo, then what's the point? I disagree with that on a critique level, on a criticism level, but on an employee level, as someone who has been in that seat, I do understand the anxiety surrounding it.
Okay.
And I don't think it's unfounded.
No. That definitely makes it clear to me, and I kind of understand and now earlier you made a comment about like maybe this anxiety is positioned towards like Hollow Knight specifically in a way that's unfair. Now I kind of see what you were saying by that.
Yeah.
Because this isn't it's not necessarily their fault, but it is this idea of a kind of way that all of these games media outlets have positioned themselves and how they stay relevant, how they stay functioning businesses, is this tie to early access.
Correct.
Which maybe does is a strong source of revenue for their business and how they kind of are able to extract value from games.
Yes. That said,
Yeah.
that is my read on this.
That's maybe the real problem is that
me seeing people being frustrated with not being able to have access for reviews and stuff comes back to, I think what you're actually frustrated with is this idea that like this is going to be make for a more tumultuous industry potentially, and this is potentially going to result in you having to crunch, which like is never good and always sucks. You know what I mean? Like there are issues with this that I think are bigger and broader and more widespread than just saying like, well, damn, I'm not getting the Hollow Knight review code. However, that is how it's being expressed, which I find to be frustrating because I'm like, can we talk about the thing we're actually talking about here? Yes, please.
And I will say I'm maybe injecting some of this conversation with previously there was a very similar conversation with, as you mentioned, the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware units. And that conversation, I think the framing of it was a little bit different. And it was this the consumer, the fear of the consumer spending their money on something that had not been thoroughly tested by a professional. And I guess there is this degree to which sometimes I do wonder why we like assume the consumer has to buy something on day one.
Yeah.
Like,
right. I mean, like that's the thing. I saw some people talking about this online about like, I was on the fence about Hollow Knight Silksong because I didn't really like the first one that much. Like it was okay, but I wasn't over the moon by it. And so they were like, so now I guess I'm just going to have to skip Hollow Knight Silksong. And I'm like, well, first of all, you sound like you weren't going to be...
Because there's no reviews?
Yeah, right, yeah. And it's like, you sound like you weren't going to be buying this thing. You shouldn't be buying this thing day one anyway, if it's not really your thing. And then also, like, some of the response to this news that there would be no reviews, in my opinion, was a little silly. And there was this assumption that, well, that means that there will be no reviews for this game at all.
Right.
No one's going to be talking about the quality of this thing.
No.
It's coming up and it's going to be a big question mark. It's like, no, this is going to be very, very well documented. There are going to be reviews of this thing. It might not be in the form that you normally read them in. You might have to not just look at, a score or whatever. But there are people are going to be talking about this game, and there are going to be reviews.
Yeah, and it's like, man, now that you frame it like this, there is a part of me that is like, isn't the review for Hollow Knight Silksong the existence of the video game called Hollow Knight? Is that not a better sign of whether or not, like for what the consumer needs to get out of the review in this world? Is that not better than any review?
Because for me, if I'm like someone who's never played Hollow Knight,
okay,
and I've heard about Silksong from the memes, but I never got around to playing the original.
Yeah.
And I hear, okay, there's not going to be any reviews about this. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to buy this day one or not. I would probably just look to Hollow Knight review. I'm not saying that like it's impossible that like Silksong comes out and it's a mess and it's terrible. That's possible. Anything's possible. But like, I think you can probably glean a lot of the information you're going to want to have about Hollow Knight Silksong based on its predecessor, simply because they are going to be similar games. Now, of course, there's going to be nuances. Of course, like I was looking up in the trailer, I'm looking in the top like left-hand side of the screen. I'm like, oh, that's some UI elements that were not in the original. I wonder what those mean, right? Like there's things to it that I'm really, really interested in, sort of like seeing the nuances of it. But largely, those individual nuances aren't the thing that people who are not familiar with Hollow Knight at all are going to really care about, right? Like,
to the average person, how much more valuable? This is apologies if this comes across as mean-spirited. To the average person, I'm so sorry. To the average person, how much more valuable is a written review on a website than social media chatter from a bunch of sources.
No, I don't think that's mean spirited. I think it is part of the conversation, right? Because like I am an advocate for don't just read reviews, watch some videos.
Oh, okay, cool.
In my opinion, if you're just looking for a quick snapshot, whatever, sure, just look at the Metacritic score. Great, I don't care. But if you are wanting to engage with the conversation of like the actual like critical understanding of this game, I do think you need to jump into multiple sources and look at multiple different things. Because this is where it starts to break down for me sort of the frustration about the way some people have been talking about this idea about like if your review requires you to have the game early.
Yeah.
And is completely worthless. And now we're talking about the art side of it. We're not talking about the corporate side of it. We're not talking about your editors and the clicks and whatever. We're talking about like if you writing a review of this game is completely worthless, if it's not coming before the game comes out, then I think you've made a bad review. And I think you are not writing a solid review.
Could we turn this conversation around then and say that maybe there is a responsibility on the side of the games media end of the spectrum to invest in maybe review content that takes place after embargoes
certainly
to empower that as something that can occur and can happen and maybe build an audience for that. And is there maybe and I do think that is something that maybe is done in like the influencer and YouTube space because they don't have access to those early reviews and often will like revisit games like years later.
Yeah. That is where I think like that is the crux of my argument.
Okay.
There are a lot of great, a year later, 5 years later, like blog posts, videos, whatever that go up by people who are trying to do a different kind of review.
Yeah.
Than just like something that would go up at launch for a game. And those, in my opinion, tend to be the sorts of reviews that I really, really appreciate and get a lot more out of because they're trying to like, not all of them, right? This is like a generalization, but like a lot of those game reviews are trying to like understand a game in the wider context or like after the hype has died down of the release, like here's how I actually feel about this now that I'm not just excited that I'm playing a new Spider-Man game or a new God of War game or whatever.
Right.
And those are because for me, the issue with reviews, anytime I have been tasked with writing a review, is I am trying to write something that is going to be, and it sounds kind of cringy, but this is the argument I'm making. I'm trying to write something that is going to be timeless and that is going to hold up to age, where it is not reactionary. It is not interested in hype. It is about how I think I'm going to feel about the game in 6 months.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that critical analysis is not the way that a lot of these reviews are written because a lot of reviews are written kind of as just like descriptions. You know what I mean? Like
summaries,
overviews,
the features.
Here's the story. Here's the what the game is. You know what I mean? And like those are the things I'm interested least about a game usually, unless those things are doing something that is compelling. So if the game is doing something interesting and compelling and meaningful and intentional with its mechanics, that's the thing. That's when I'm starting to say like, okay, let me write about this. Let me talk about this.
Such an interesting thing, Peter, because I almost feel that the video game outlets need to invent something that functions as the day one review that is not the kind of more thoughtful critical take. Because I think they could.
There's the conflict between the idea of like, what is a review? Is it are you writing about like an art review in the way you would review a film? Because no one in the film industry is reviewing like, how does the film run?
Right.
Like they're not talking about like that. They're discussing what it means and like the cinematography and like how these things like shape your feeling and viewing and understanding of the like text of the movie. And
by and large, we recognize that is maybe something that a lot of kind of day zero video game reviews, that's not really their intention.
No, a lot of them are a lot more like consumer reviews.
Yeah.
Appliance reviews almost, like, does it run well? And like these are things that I think we're talking about. I really like the Digital Foundry reviews. I also think Skill Up on YouTube does a lot of really great like in his reviews, he will talk about the hardware and how it runs and things like that, which I always really appreciate because I just think it's I think he does a good job of like integrating those aspects of a game review into the actual like body of like talking about how a game feels and whatever. I think he's actually a very good reviewer. So if you are looking for someone to follow, Skill Up, little YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers. But you know what I mean? Like I think he's someone who has a very like clear voice. But it's that conflict of like, is this an art review? Is this a product review? And we've all sort of like said like, well, it's kind of in the middle. But in my opinion, a lot of the reviews that are going up at embargo lean a lot further into this is a product review than actually like this is an art review.
Yeah, because so much of it to me, at least in my experience of reading reviews, particularly lately, is that it is functioning very similarly to kind of like an overview trailer that a company might put out. But it's like the benefit of having an overview trailer that is not made by the game itself. So in theory, you can be like, here are the graphics. I think they are good. Here is the gameplay. I think that it is good. And that's fine. But I do think, kind of to bring this back to the Hollow Knight conversation, is that sometimes there is this sense of, in conversations like this, maybe viewing reviews as doing the best possible, most artistic thing, and then being like, now we can't do that. But I maybe feel like that was not happening anyways.
Yeah. Yes. And that's my frustration with this idea of like, like Hollow Knight. Well, now we don't get to do our reviews. And I'm speaking largely and broadly. And I also hope like people listening to this understand that like we are not coming from an anti-journalist, anti-reviewer standpoint. I think, in my opinion, that is clear. But I also understand like, you know, some people are seeing us for the first time. Hey, welcome.
Oh, okay, sure.
If you are,
sure.
Hope you're enjoying the show.
Yeah.
Consider potentially checking out patreon.com/criticalerror.
There's a bonus episode every single week.
Where we discuss all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But this is not, I don't want this to come across as anti-reviewer, anti-critic, anti-journalist, anything like that, because that's not my intention. And as someone who is, I guess, up until recently been one of those people, like I totally understand the frustrations. I totally understand the limitations and everything like that. But yes, you're right. I don't think that a lot of these reviews are making something that is really, really, really impactful and saying something.
I think
really
what we are critical of is a structure that is not giving way to.
It's not letting you do it.
It's not only is it not letting you do it, it's like teaching you not to. It's like teaching you that what's important is not that.
Yeah.
So
you can't blame the writer. You look at, we're talking about the system, right? And we're looking at like how this is so challenging to try and like navigate. So it's tough. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and I do just wish that there maybe was, if this was something that people really felt passionately for, maybe these battles are happening and I just don't know. But I would love to see some investment in the concept of a review for something after it has come out. Yeah. I would love to see that, especially from more and more we are seeing self-proclaimed independent outlets pop up. Yeah. And I do wonder if you are operating in a way that is not aligned with corporate interests, and you are operating in an independent way and can pursue things that are valuable to you and your organization. If that is the case, should we still be so attached to the treadmill, to the way in which all of these corporately aligned companies are operating, or is it worth it to explore a different path?
This is going to be very easier, way, way easier said than done.
Yeah, of course.
This is like something that is like, I worry that anyone listening to this that might be on if you are a journalist, critic, whatever, that you're
probably
like, why didn't I think of that? Come on now.
It's probably very frustrating. You're just doing your job. Yeah.
Yes. Because that's the thing. At the end of the day, the frustration is not with the writer necessarily, but it is with the requirements that are being placed on them.
Right.
But like for me, and it's also much, much more difficult to do this when you are like working for a large company.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That has like other interests in mind that are just like not interested in taking risks or whatever. But to me, I'm like, okay, if we're having this problem where the corporate interests of this landscape conflict with what we're able to do, and let's say Hollow Knight is a domino that hits it, every other big thing that we're not doing reviews like this anymore, then I would say like, okay, well, we need to shift in figuring out how we can capture that same audience in a different way. And again, way easier said than done. Here I am, just spitballing an idea. Peter, I can fix all of media right now with this. But
the more you talk about this, though, the more I am like, man, there really should be something that like the IGNs of the world put out that is like the fake review, like the review for the hoi polloi. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it would be a good idea to have a mechanical review, and then a critical review, and you can even like have impressions in that initial review,
of course.
And I just think that like there is a degree to even when a website or an outlet or whatever has like a month to review a game, you don't really see the difference in when they have like 2 days to review the game. And it feels like there's an ideology that is ever present that is like very much attached to one way of constructing a review. So I just think that we need to start exploring like other ways of doing things across the board. And maybe there can be something that comes. Would it be so terrible if something came out when Hollow Knight came out and it was like, here's how it feels, here's how it looks, here's how it performs on all of the different platforms, and then a formal review is coming. Just something to click on, man.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up that point. This isn't something that I've like really had to think about, but I'm thinking about it now.
Of course.
Is this idea of like, I still do, based on my work as a freelancer, I will get early access to certain games.
Yeah, of course.
And as you say, though, like certain games you get like a lot of time with.
Yeah.
Like a lot of time with, and some you don't. And it's very like, you always hope like, okay, these big, 100-hour RPGs, you're going to get like way in advance.
And
then like more often than not, you don't. But it is interesting trying to think think back, like I'm thinking about the games that I got access to this year.
Okay.
And like, there are some games that had literally a full month. There's, and I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about it, so I'm just not gonna, if that's okay. I don't mean to be like talking around it. I'm just like thinking about like, I don't know if I've
got an example.
Go ahead.
When I reviewed Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, they gave us so much time. I think it was like 2 months. I couldn't believe when that came in. And that's a big chonker, that game.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, and it affected the way that I consumed it, for sure. Yeah.
But to your point though, like I'm thinking back about like, okay, there's one game in recent memory that like we had a lot of time with, which was very appreciated, but I'm like, did that result in like quote unquote like better reviews? I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, of course.
Like
I think it often does not, because I do think that what the review is in the mainstream kind of concept of the review, it does feel a little like I'm filling something out. So
yeah,
it takes the amount of time it takes to fill out that review more than it does like, oh, because I have more time with this, I'm going to, because it doesn't result in more time with it. It results in more time for other stuff, right?
Well, I mean, it means that like, if you get like 2 months or a month or whatever, it means like, oh, I got to actually play this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
as opposed to like a lot of the time, like sometimes it's just like, this is kind of a review in progress because I haven't beaten it because of the scope of the game. Like when like Elden Ring came out, a lot of those reviews were like, reviews in progress because this is like 100-hour game.
Man, review in progress is crazy to me. I think if I was the leader of an outlet, I would say we are never typing out the words review in progress.
But that's why. But this whole conversation is the reason why they exist.
Yeah, I know.
Is because there has to be.
Came up with. That's what. Yeah.
It has to be something that says Elden Ring review or Hollow Knight review or whatever review on the page the day that the game comes out.
Imagine I'm like reading a book, and I go on Goodreads, review in progress, and then I come back like a week later and I'm like, sharp left turn, guys. Sharp left turn. That's good.
Like, here's my review in progress of Fight Club. You know what I mean?
That's
and then you're like, yo, it's very different. Hey, didn't get to that part. But
I thought I knew what was going on.
Yes,
turns out no.
Yeah. And like, I think that the frustrations surrounding the Hollow Knight review cycle
Okay.
are really telling about a lot of different facets of the industry.
Okay. I would love to know.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I guess I would love to know what the listener, who I assume is maybe like primarily a consumer and a video game player, and based on Hollow Knight.
Do these matter to you?
I'm genuinely curious. Like, you see the news that there's not going to be reviews. What is your first thought? And then what's your second thought? And
you know what? Hit me with your third thought.
Why do people read reviews, and what do they get out of them? Like, stuff like this. I would just love to know from like the listener or whatever, if they feel that there's a part of video game reviews as they are now that leaves them feeling unsatisfied. I'd be interested to know that. How do you consume reviews? Do you go out of your way and do you look for certain people, or when a game comes out, do you just see which ones pop up? Like, all of that. I would love to know all of this.
Are you, Jake, can I ask you, are you a big reviews guy? Do you read a lot of reviews when games come out?
I find reviews to maybe be the most boring version of writing about video games. I'm not really interested in reviews. I think that reviews primarily are for somebody who is not me. I think as somebody who has played a lot of games and is in the video game space, I kind of more or less can tell you whether or not I'm going to like buy a game and see for myself. And even a lot of times what I'm going to think about it just by like seeing it in trailers. And I think that the aim of the review is not, as it stands right now, personal and individual and trying to like tell me a story or take me on, put me in their shoes, as much as it is trying to tell me whether or not I should buy a game. It's more about me, the person reading it, than it is about them, the person writing it.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I kind of stay away from reviews because I don't need a reviewer to tell me about me. I need them to tell me about them. So when reviews do come out for stuff, I have a handful of people that I do my due diligence, and I just like to know what they thought because I like the way that they write and it titillates me. Yeah.
Because that's how it is for me. Like, there are a handful, like I have like two, depending on if they actually are writing a review for it, but there's like just a few people that I really go to for reviews. Like I mentioned, like SkillUp is one of them. Gio Colantonio, I don't know if he's still doing reviews.
He is.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But I know that his stuff at Digital Trends was phenomenal, and now he's at Polygon now.
Yep.
I did know that. I read something about one of his reviews recently. Sorry, go on.
He just wrote a piece about Chibi Robo that I appreciated greatly. A game that
I did see that.
I just played that for the first time as well.
Nice.
Oh my god. Oh, Peter. Quick tangent. You turn on Chibi Robo.
Have you playing Chibi Robo?
It kind of communicates to you that it is a masterpiece in like 8 minutes.
Interesting.
It's like that's how long it takes. I was sitting there playing this game. I didn't whatever. And I literally turned it on and I was like, oh. Congratulations.
Is that on the NSO?
Yeah, that's why we were playing it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But anyways.
But I think like I personally look for a critic who I've found like I generally align with how they feel about games, and also I like how they talk about games. That's sort of where I like fall with these sorts of things. But I also like I think that the big conversation about like, well, what is a review is always really interesting to me, because then I'm thinking about like okay, I make YouTube videos.
Yeah,
are my videos reviews? I'm like kinda a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's a critical piece. It's a response. Yeah,
yeah.
And I really am. I keep coming back to this idea of like. I guess now that I'm saying it, I'm reading reviews because I want to know more about the person whose words I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people want to know about, they want to like delete the reviewer and they want to know about the game and their relationship to the game.
Yeah.
And the reviewer is like the conduit to that understanding. But those reviews don't do a lot to me because I think that I can just do that with a trailer.
Yeah. And that's why for me, the idea of like, okay, no Hollow Knight reviews is like, again, this is me in my life as someone who is not currently a games journalist, really, but I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of unaffected by this because I was not probably going to read those kinds of reviews anyway.
Yeah.
And the reviews that I was going to be interested in are coming in a few months when people have had time to like sit with it and like write about it or make videos about it or whatever. So that's kind of where I fall with it. Yeah.
I have a review coming out soon.
Do you?
Yeah.
Want to share with the class what it might be about?
You know what? I will. I'll leak it if you will. I have a review coming out for Donkey Kong Bonanza soon.
Oh, now Jake, this is going to be interesting. I've been playing Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Right.
Can I say something about this game?
Yeah.
I think everything's too squishy.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So there's the scan where you like hit the ground and then it like it tells you kind of like what's around there.
Yeah.
I don't like that when I hit that, I'm like denting stuff. Or like when I jump on something, I'm like denting it because I'm like, no, I'm just trying to land on it. I want to I'm going to climb up the wall. I don't want to be in the wall now.
That's them trying to communicate how strong and powerful Donkey Kong is, and it's like, look, he's different from Mario because he's a big, strong gorilla.
But I'm also like, it feels like I'm just like constantly like sinking through the floor. It feels like everything's made of quicksand.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a large part of my perspective on that game is informed by I have this claim that you're not playing as Donkey Kong, you're playing as God.
Are you playing as Jake or are you playing as God right now?
I think I'm playing as Jake right now, but now you're really Peter, can I read you something I wrote for this week?
I would love to hear an essay you've written, Jake.
Great. This piece is called, I went a little long this week, apologies. This piece is called Street Fighter Girls.
Street Fighter Girls, you say?
Street Fighter Girls.
Well, you have my attention, Jake.
Excellent. The first time I noticed a girl, really noticed her, she was playing Street Fighter at Tony Roney's Pizzeria. Natalie was in the grade above mine, a year older, and therefore infinitely older. A galaxy of mystery contained in that small difference. She wasn't the sister of a friend, or of a friend's brother, or of my brother's friends, which meant she arrived in my world without preface. Our fathers saw each other by the register. They shared the secret handshake of parents who orbit the same morning drop-offs in parking lots. They smiled, the two smiles grown-ups always manage, one with the mouth, another tucked away, folded in the mustache or the crow's feet, always meant for another. I wondered then, and I still do, I really still do, what parents said when children were not listening. That secret grammar to adulthood. An enviable banter that they traded between pickup times and pizza orders, or was it all just weather and politeness? A hollow patter that disguised some deeper and unspoken thing. Natalie's father, in any case, looked down at me, and then over at the machine in the corner, the one that glowed like stained glass in that dark, greasy chapel of sauce and mozzarella. Street Fighter? He asked, his mustache tilting into a second grin. Then he turned and called simply, Natalie. And I heard it. I heard tons of something inside that parent's syllables. Lee wasn't Natalie at all. It was shorthand for keep this idiot kid busy while I talk to his dad about whatever it is fathers talk about when they think no one is listening. I don't remember the match clearly, though in my memory it lasts for hours. Whole pies worth of cheese bubbling in the oven. What I do remember is that Natalie knew things I had not guessed at, things that I could never have guessed at. I thought I understood video games. I knew the joystick, I knew the 6 buttons, I knew the blunt mechanics of winning a game, but Natalie knew the reach of Chun-Li's kicks. She knew the secret geometry hidden in the joystick, those incantatory quarter circles that summoned fireballs, the Z-shaped spells that lifted characters off the ground in parabolas of flame. I thought that they were martial artists, but she revealed them as magicians. I was mashing buttons, graceless, clumsy, a child pounding an untuned piano, hoping something like music would come out. When I landed a hit, a small victory, a glancing blow, I would look over at her, hoping for the faintest recognition that I was not altogether hopeless, but she was already moving on, her focus somewhere beyond me, locked into the bright other world, humming inside the cabinet. You know, I never won a match, not even close, but man, she was astonishing. And then too soon, it seemed, Tony Roney, I guess, or his brother, called out, one large pep, and Natalie let the controls fall from her hands. Good games, she said to me, lying with a smile, as she trotted off toward the exit, leaving me there alone in the arcade glow, surrounded by the musk of pepperoni and the sharper, newer scent that I barely understood, a hormonal quickening that I would later recognize as the beginning of something. She was only a year older, just a year, but she already knew a secret language. One of the game, the quarter circles, the dragon punches, the things hidden in plain sight. A year! And I had so much to learn about Street Fighter, about girls, about everything.
Jake, you're infuriating, and it's because I have to make one next week. And like, so I have to go next. Is basically
No,
that
it's
was
good
phenomenal.
every week. It's always
that was
good.
phenomenal. My goodness, no. Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
Does that really happen to you? I mean, obviously, for sure, at least a little bit.
There's a part of it. There's a heart to this story.
Yeah.
That I started writing this, and something that I would like to do if I ever have okay. I've thought about this before. There is a book that I would like to pitch in the future that is using each Street Fighter game as a device to talk about growing up and to kind of use it as a tool to tell stories about, here's where I am with Street Fighter 1. I'm noticing a girl for the first time. And now Street Fighter 2, you jump to when that game came out. What year is it? You jump to 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is a story about becoming an adult. And I would like to do this at some point, and I've never actually sat down and like had the opportunity to write it. So I was like, oh, what a perfect opportunity to try to do something like this. So I don't know. I'm really compelled by this idea of the fighting game as the world you don't understand, but you learn. You learn through practice and experimentation and through losing. And I think that like romantic relationships are kind of like that too.
I was gonna say, is it that because that's a great. I like the way that piece draws that comparison.
Yeah,
and especially through the eyes of being a kid.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And your, limited knowledge of what relationships are actually like. Damn, dude, that was great.
Yeah. What else does Natalie know? What else does she know? That 1 year older, man. Oh,
but what you said too at the beginning there is just such a universal like kid thing about like she's a year older than me, which means she's way older,
infinitely older.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Because that's true. That's how it felt, right? And at a certain point that ends. But I kind of don't really know when that ends.
Yeah. Such a fun thing. I don't know. It was I'm glad I have the opportunity here to not just write kind of essays, but also like do
it gets to be other explorations of things. Yeah.
Because I would say this is my actual craft that I care the most about. And I don't know, there's like things I do in this piece that as like a writer I'm really into. The idea of being like, the narrator brings it up first, that the what do the parents talk about when I am not around? And then immediately after, the parent is to the perspective kind of like, shoo, get out of here, as if to confirm that they are talking, they're doing something.
There's things going on over there that they kind of don't want you to be there for.
Right. But how much of that is real and how much of that is the perspective? These are, I don't know. I love stories like this. I think it's just fun to do.
No, that was great. That was great. I would also like to retract my statement where I seemed very interested in the concept of Street Fighter girls.
You're not interested?
Have I lost you? Oh, we're back.
You lost? No, we're back. We're back. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to formally retract my voice and statement surrounding Street Fighter girls. I thought this was going to be about Chun-Li and Cammy, and not about a second grader. So thanks for doing that to me.
Oh, okay. So I kind of titillated you at the beginning because you thought you were about to get little.
I thought this was going somewhere completely different. And can I be honest with you, Jake?
Yeah.
I far prefer where this went.
Oh, that's good. That makes me happy.
This was an interesting, very, very fun reading here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Wow.
Because here's the thing, to be entirely honest with you, I don't know how much I can talk about this because I want to sit with it a little bit. I think I'm going to go back and re-listen to that, and I'll probably text you about it.
Oh, lovely. Oh, I can't wait for that. Ooh.
And I'm sorry. Sorry to say that I'm taking the podcast and going home.
No. I hope that's what everybody. See, listen. Where I feel like there is work that somebody puts in to getting. Like I put in work so that you can understand me, and I kind of hope that anybody who consumes my work puts in some work to understand what I'm saying as well. Like there's almost I'm like asking you, especially in a written piece, there's a degree to which like there's a level of intimacy there when you read somebody else's writing.
Yeah.
And I would hope that it is like, if you understand every single thing I was doing and everything I was trying to say, like the second the sentence leaves the page and enters your brain, then that's not really what I'm trying to do.
No, and I'm also like, I don't want to just like talk at you to just talk at you. I want to, like, because I think I need to marinate a little bit. I need to sit with this.
I would love that. Well, listen, we're already over the time for the pod anyways.
We are. So I think this is a great opportunity to remind our listeners that they can join us for extra content. If you like this episode, there's more like it, but like double, and not on YouTube, but on patreon.com/criticalerror, where for just $5 a month, you can join our nation.
And if you subscribe now, you get all of the episodes we've already recorded, which I think are evergreen and just kind of about you, about me, about the things that we're interested in talking about. And of course, we have a $10 supporter, Peter.
I would literally never forget them. I can't. They've impacted my life
hugely. And we even created a special sound effect for this person. Would you mind if I played that right now?
I would love it if you did.
Andrew Bolkar gets me every time.
It gets me every time.
That's nice.
It's nice. And it's extremely nice of them to be our I think Critical Error royalty, I believe it's called on the pod.
Could you imagine if we had 2, 3, 4, 5, what I would have to do?
The amount of effects and everything would be I worry the strain it would have on your computer.
No, I mean, listen, I think the people, if you want to see that the power is in your hands.
It is. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week. Bye.